Hey there, everybody.
Welcome back to the Strawberry Hill Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Simmons, and we are here at the Shop Cigar Lounge. Like I always say, if you haven't been down here, please come down here. It's an awesome little spot. We got live music on the weekends. Come check us out. So before we get started, I want you guys to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Make sure you follow us on all the social media platforms. Like I said, we're on Instagram, then we're on YouTube, and then Facebook, we're Mike on the Mic. So always check us out. So today we have one of my favorite whiskeys locally here, West Bottoms Whiskey, and Alex here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, man. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Welcome on.
Oh, thank you. I will also reinforce what you said earlier. You should come down to the shop.
Thank you.
This place is really cool.
Thank you,
For
man.
someone who also appreciates history and old buildings, like this space is pretty incredible.
So, how you liking your cigar, man?
I'm loving it. It's good. I said I haven't smoked one in a while. It's probably been a few months, and I said something sweet and mild, and this fits the bill. It's very good.
Like I said, I don't get to smoke very often with my guests, so I'm glad that you said you wanted a cigar. So, makes me a little bit happy.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers to that, man. So, tell me like a little background story about you, man. Like where you're from, and like
how far back do I go? I was born in Wyandotte County.
Shit.
Yeah, I
You're
was
an
born.
original Dot.
I am in the Dot. Yeah, I'm from the Dot.
Look at that.
I was born here, 57th Street.
So you're really from the Dot.
Yeah, I'm from the Dot. Born here. I mean, I moved a little bit as a kid. I spent some time in Jacksonville, Florida, but ultimately, ended back here in Kansas City, and did the normal college, high school college thing. Got a normal job.
Where'd you go to college at?
University of Kansas. Yep, University of Kansas. It was fun. I mean, it was crazy for a big school like that, and the work I do now, I'm exposed to so many different personalities and walks of life, which is incredible. And the experience I got at KU was great, for what I was looking for at the time.
What did you go to KU for?
Oh, God. Finance.
It's funny.
It's finance. That's what I had to do it,
I went to K-State and I went for business management, but then like immediately when I got out, I was a cop. So it's just like, I spent all that money and time just for no reason. And then like when I opened this, like, all right, I could use my degree. I'm like, I don't remember anything from when I went to school. So
it's kind of crazy. I mean, I did finance, and then I made like kind of a career shift and went into software consulting, which I actually liked. I was pretty good at it. But that's when I started hobbying. I was like, all right, I want to do something in my free time, and distilling was kind of it for me on the weekends. Is kind of just what I did.
Was it like beer or whiskey or just?
I started with beer. I mean, a lot of people do. I mean, I think there's something fundamental about making beer that a lot of distillers should know, and that's how do you basically extract all that sugar and goodness out of grain itself. But my beers weren't very good.
I'm not a big beer fan.
I mean, I like beer.
I like beer too, but I would rather prefer a bourbon or a whiskey over anything.
I get that.
Yeah, and
I think a lot of people, it's important, I think, to note and to tell people. I mean, everyone has their own relationship with alcohol, right? Like there's the timid to the extreme to the, okay, you're overdoing it. But somewhere in the middle, everyone has their own history and relationship with alcohol, whether it's whiskey, tequila, beer, vodkas, or anything like that. And I definitely, in my 20s, I drank a lot of beer. I mean, I loved craft beer. 403 Club, I thought was one of the coolest spots in KCK at the time, because Artie was doing, just craft beers that weren't like, it was like $1 or $2 cheaper than anywhere else in Kansas City. I was like, you can get this stuff here for this much. And I was like, I got to start coming here more often.
Strawberry Hill influence in you too.
A little bit, yeah.
403,
yeah. I've been around a little bit.
So you go to KU, start distilling some beer, kind of get into that. And so when you get back, I guess, to KC, what are you doing then?
I mean, I was, software consulting, and then brewing beer in my garage. And then ultimately I was like, I'm really kind of liking whiskey. I'm getting to that point where I want to explore what it is. Especially, I mean, I spent a year and a half as an adult working in Jacksonville, Florida. And Florida is an incredible state to vacation in.
Different beast.
It is a whole different area, a whole different group of people. It was nuts. It was a crazy time. I really wanted to be back. I missed what Kansas City was.
Did you go to Jacksonville just for work?
For work and to, try to change it up. I think a lot of people in their 20s want to escape from the area. Even though Kansas City is a proper metro, right? There is a lot of varying degrees across both states. But I think people do want to escape. They want to go west. They want to go east and see what that's like. And I did it, and it did not work for me. I missed what Kansas City was and the history and the roots that were tied to it. And for me, whiskey kind of was a part of that, that grain to glass kind of aspect. So I started just drinking some whiskeys, and when I was homebrewing, I ended up buying a 10-gallon copper Olympic pot still. If you've ever seen one, it's got a big old belly. It's all hand-hammered copper. It's a super traditional method of distillation, and I took what I learned from brewing beer and that mashing process and kind of move that into distillation to see how I can, take grains. I mean, beers are great. I mean, you can get all kinds of different malts in a beer and get lots of flavors, and hops obviously have a big influence on that. And if you compare that to whiskeys, I love when you can take different grains, and that when you distill it and it comes out of that still clear, you can taste what those elements of those grains are. And to me, that was really, really fascinating.
White lightning.
White lightning, moonshine, all of that. Yeah, comes out hot. So I love that process. And then, when I started to put whiskey into, really small barrels, that's when it kind of, my mind kind of blew. I was like, oh my gosh, you can age, you can really refine a really nice whiskey, doing it on that small scale, weekend after weekend, and then getting that aging technique.
Did you start off with like the super, super small barrels?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like everybody.
Like 1 liter, 2 liter barrels. I had it all down to a science of, or method of how much I can get from each batch kind of thing. And, it was really fascinating. I loved it. I fell in love with the process of distillation.
So what kind of geared you toward that, like towards whiskey and not anything else like a scotch or a gin or? Yeah.
Whiskey to me has it has story, right? There's something to be said. You can turn around and you can turn a fermentable, whether it's a beer or a wine or anything like that, or just grain fermenting into a spirit very quickly. And you can package that and you can sell it. Whiskey to me, you are introducing nature in a sense to the actual distillate, and that can impart a lot of changes throughout. I mean, for me, when I say whiskey has story, it's because it has gone through things as well, much like us. When I started West Bottoms Whiskey Company, I used to do on the tour, I used to talk about it. I was like, the barrels we use and these whiskeys, they set up way up high in a rick house. They sit way down low. They were moved around. They made it through COVID too. Like all of that is just story, and where a barrel sits in a rick house can affect flavors as well. And that to me is what's really cool. Oh yeah. It adds a kind of an X factor to a distillate essentially. I love that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you start distilling your own stuff, and then I guess where does it hit to where you're like, oh, I can actually do something with this? Yeah,
it was. I had 2 aha moments. The first moment was just generally just sharing the whiskey I made with people. I used to make a wheat whiskey, and wheat is super soft and it's got a nice sweetness and honeyness to it when you age it. And people were like, "Ooh, I don't really like whiskey, but I like that." Or I could.
Are you just
that.
like kind of like trying it out with your friends, or?
Yep, taking it to parties, sharing it with some people. Started sharing with some business owners down the West Bottoms too a little bit, just to be like, hey, what's going on? And that feedback to me was really important, and it was very eerily consistent. I was like, maybe I've got something here. And the next thing was coming up with kind of a business plan, and I quickly realized, one, you need some money to start.
Yeah.
But also, two, you need a brand. And for me, the brand coming up with that that's what took the longest time, because I cared so much about it. And if I'm going to make this decision for my life, then it's got to be well thought out. And the brand was really important. And that's when I came up with Murdoch. Murdoch is our figurehead.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about how did Murdoch come along?
He's our top-hatted industrial gentleman, essentially. For me, I fell in love with the West Bottoms neighborhood, years ago. And that's because of kind of what that neighborhood is and where it stands. It is almost, when I was going there, 10 years ago, it was like a relic. It was like walking through an old ghost town, but it was still coming alive, and things were happening down there. And you got to walk through these buildings and experience that history, which I think was really important, and especially for businesses that are moving down there. If I was going to do something down there, it was going to have to be in the name of like preservation and appreciation for that neighborhood and the industry that was happening down there. And so to come up with a figurehead like Murdoch, I wanted to have him be kind of almost like a union boss, if you will, back then. It was working with Tom Pendergast and the machine type of thing. He's got a mechanical jaw. He's got his top hat. The top hat's kind of meant to symbolize kind of that, old age money, the Rockefeller, the Vanderbilts, the JP Morgans that were kind of building industry and growing America at that time. And that mechanical jaw is really meant to represent the industrious people, because it really was people. It was millions of workers making millions of widgets to put together cars. The building that we're in, by the way, it was an old that we started, and it was an old tractor factory. 1893, Oliver Tractor Company. It's the Oliver building. And tractors were brand new technology then. So if you imagine all that industry happening in that era, that to me was inspiring. And I wanted to have a figurehead for that. So once I kind of came up with Murdoch, and it was a very bad drawing. I did several very bad drawings and some inspiration.
It's all good. It took me a while. Me and one of my friends came up with our logo, and there was like 40 different ones. So.
It's hard. Yeah. Like what is your dream? What is your vision when you put it on paper and you put it on something that's going to go out to, all these people? Like, you want it to be good. You want it to represent.
You want it to stand out. You want it to pop. You want it to be like, when people see that, like people see West Bottoms whiskey, like they kind of know exactly what they're looking for. Yeah.
And that's good. That takes time, and years to build. But if you stand by it and you keep working at it, like, it'll be good.
So you came up with Murdoch, and then I guess you said you loved West Bottoms, and you're just like, did you just want to be down there, nowhere else? Because it's funny, because like I wanted this shop to be in Strawberry Hill, but if I couldn't find a spot, I was going to go to West Bottoms. I even had like a location and everything. So I know what you mean when you say like West Bottoms feel. I love that feel down there.
I love that you said that, Mike, because I also explored Strawberry Hill, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I talked to a couple building owners over here. Keep in mind, Kansas and Missouri are two different states, no matter the proximity, and the liquor laws are very different per state. The building owners were not very interested here per se, just because the laws. It's new. I mean, Kansas is a little bit tougher, I think, to get into, to produce. And Missouri has just historically just been one of those states that is kind of like, just do what you're going to do. Just be safe.
They're willing to try something new more than Kansas is.
Yeah. Or the laws are just different. I mean, Missouri does have a very good and storied, moonshining history, which is fascinating. But, ultimately it was the West Bottoms. I actually formed the business on paper and called it West Bottoms Whiskeys LLC before I even had a spot.
Really?
The spot I found, though, and this is funny. We like to share it on the tour too, but we found it I found it on Craigslist. I was just looking through Craigslist, trying to find spaces. Nothing else, people. It's used for non-nefarious things.
Sure, Craigslist. Yeah.
It worked. Our space, it's really unique. Our building, like I said earlier, was the Oliver building. It's 6 stories. It was built in 1893. It's massive wood beams, much like here. Beautiful brickwork in the space. And the spot that I found on Craigslist was super unique to the building too. They manufactured tractors there, and because of all the tall buildings and all the industry happening on there, how do you get these heavy pieces of equipment on and off of trains through there? So they built a train tunnel. They call it a half track, and that tunnel basically went completely through the building. So took that space over, and I said, okay, I think I can bootstrap this. I've got just enough money to get this open, to form a small production area or bonded space, if you will, and a little bit of seating so people can sit there and have some cocktails and learn about our whiskeys. And that's when we were able to get that open in January 2021.
Yeah. And then you said that you went through the whole thing during COVID too, right?
Yeah. It's kind of fascinating. Like we opened basically at the tail end of COVID, like before the vaccines were coming out, and people were able to come out, which was nice. But there were definitely restrictions. Had we opened right before COVID, I don't know what our story would have been. But for us, I think that when we entered the market as a product with our Kansas City whiskey on shelves, but also us as a new space to go and check out when nothing new had really been able to be opened in the 2-year span, basically, I think was really beneficial to us. I mean, we were something new for people to check out, and so we got a really good chance to like tell our story that way.
So you guys opened in, you said January 21?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So this is pretty new, which is awesome.
It's pretty new. Yeah. We were really excited to hit the 3-year mark. I mean, for a small business, as you know,
I hit my 1-year mark and it's been like a blur. I'm like, it's been a year already.
It's crazy. Well, I still had a full-time job my first year.
Yeah, I was just about
for
to ask
6 months.
Like, what were you doing like before all this?
For 6 months, I was basically doing both, and it was extremely hard.
Were you like in finance, or were you like in
software consulting? I mean, and because of COVID, I mean, my job was remote, so I was sitting there in the middle of Blend, taking deliveries, but also being on calls, you know, with customers. And try not to make too much noise in that space. And it got to a point where, and actually, this is a story. I don't share the story very often, but it was kind of a shit or get off the pot moment.
Oh, 100%.
You know?
Yeah.
And I've been waiting all day for the delivery. Had bottles of whiskey arriving. It was going to come on a big pallet truck, and a call starting at 3:30. Lo and behold, the call starts, truck shows up, it gets stuck, and you have to make a call at that point. And I was like, all right, that's the call. I mean, I can't do both. I've got to fully commit to this, or else it's not going to get the attention it needs. You know, it's like your baby here. You know, like it probably needs a lot of love and attention.
Yeah. Like I was a cop for 15 years, and I knew I wanted to do this, and I knew I had to do this full time. Yeah, this wasn't. I couldn't do a part time here, part time there. Like you have to fully invest in something you love, or it's not going to work.
It's crazy too. I mean, especially for a retail space. I think a lot of people right now who are in their normal jobs are trying to create side hustles because that comes from passion, right? And with something like, a cigar shop and the relationship you have to form and the space that you have to create. Yeah. And then on the supplier side for whiskey, for us to create a product and to provide a space for people to come and experience it and put story behind it. Like it is not something you can kind of half-ass or kind of do on the side. Like to really make it grow, I think you really have to commit to something like that. That was scary for me.
Yeah, it's very scary. It gets scary to most people. Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time the scariest thing to do when you're when you're a small business or anything like this is you're betting on yourself. That's the scariest thing to do. It's like betting on yourself because no one else kind of believes in you but you. Yeah. So it's like that's scary because like you're just putting all your eggs in one basket. Like, God, I hope this works out. Yeah. And normally, if you have enough passion and like will to make it work, it will work. Just a lot of work, a lot of effort.
It's grind. It's a lot of
grind.
I think the one thing that's real different about it is, every day really is different. Like you come into work and you could shape your job or shape your life as much as you can to get a 9 to 5. It never really works out when you own a business. But you're always faced with things that you just don't know. And every day I'm faced with something I don't have the answer to. And that was very different for me coming from the jobs that I did have in the past where, I felt like I knew what I was doing. Yeah. And with this, it's a different feeling of like, I don't know what to do. Or I've never faced this. And what permit do I have to pull for this? And it's in this state or this state. Like it's a different environment altogether.
Yeah. So did you learn, I mean, did you have any mentors before you got into it, or did you learn anything from anywhere else? Or
I did, I read a lot. Like my distillation and aging and blending, I self-taught, I didn't go to school for this. I'll remind people. But I did read a lot and I did try a lot. Like I did a lot of distillation and aging at home just to really kind of understand what it meant, and how do you actually scale from an operation like that to something a little bit bigger, and then to grow it, beyond that those are still things I'm learning. It's tough though.
It's very tough. So you get it open in January 21, right? Yeah. So I guess what's it like when you first open? Like, are you like, all right, like we got this building, got everything set. Like, how did you start getting your name out there? Yeah, because you guys did a pretty good job of getting your name out there, because I think I heard about you guys pretty early on. And
I mean, that goes back to new products. Our distributor did a good job of getting us into places and exposing us. A lot of our growth was pretty organic though. I mean, when we opened, we had one product. It was our Kansas City whiskey. and how do we sell a product in that space and out in the market, and how do you talk about it? We came up with a cocktail list for our parlor that we wanted to showcase. It had 5 drinks on the menu, and that was it. And we were only open one day a week, and it was Saturday, kind of thing. But I mean, after a while, it just kind of took place. And I think the experience that we were trying to offer in our cocktail parlor was really unique too.
Yeah.
We didn't, I mean, for us as a business, I think it was important for us to offer a space, especially with One Whiskey, where cocktails are talked about and prominent, but it's also a comfortable place to see. We didn't have enough whiskeys for a flight back then.
Yeah.
So what do you
do?
do?
You got one,
You come and you drink the cocktails featuring all this one whiskey.
Yeah.
But we did it, I think we did it really well, and provided a space that was comfortable for people to come in and, hang out.
So are you seeing more of a demand now that year 3?
It ebbs and flows, honestly. It's up and down. Summer months are generally, people don't like whiskey. I love when people come up with new whiskey cocktails for summer. Like a whiskey smash.
Summer's always hard because it's like, I'm a huge whiskey and bourbon guy. I mean, like, you get the summer, it's like 100 degrees outside. It's like, I don't feel like drinking whiskey right now outside.
Right.
But I kind of still do it. I'm not gonna lie.
There's so many different ways, and I think until people try it, because I mean, I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes I just want, a lot of my summers in the past were just gin and tonics, G&Ts all day, a ton of those. But I mean, there's different ways to drink different whiskeys. A highball is great, and it's a great way to explore a whiskey, especially scotches. That add some effervescence. It adds that water, so you're not completely punched in the face by whatever you're drinking. But it opens up whiskeys in a kind of a cool way. That's, to me, a nice way to drink. And of course, the horse feather is...
Yeah, I'm a big old-fashioned guy. And you guys have a pre-made old-fashioned mix, don't you guys?
So, yeah, we
tried it. Yeah, one of my neighbors had it.
The evolution of our old-fashioned is funny.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. When we were about to open, come in with the cocktail, I was like, well, we have to have an old-fashioned on the menu. So we went around and tried a bunch of old-fashions around town. Didn't really like a lot of them. And our whiskey has a pretty unique, our Kansas City whiskey has a pretty unique spice, caramel flavor. And I'm like, how do you accentuate, highlight a whiskey in an old fashioned? So we came up with one that we really liked. We used maple syrup, a couple dashes of Ango, 1 drop of chocolate bitters.
Oh man, sounds good already.
When we were there in our space, we used one of our barrel staves. We put a little orange bitters on the barrel stave, and we torch it, and we put the glass on top, and that doesn't just smoke; it kind of creates a fog in the glass. As we did that, we did a dried mandarin and a very, very nice Marasca cherry, and put that on the menu, and we just called it the best old fashioned in Kansas City because we just thought it was the best old fashioned in Kansas City. That was pretty funny for us as a new business and not knowing where things were going, with the health crisis at that time. We just wanted to see if it would bring people down, and it did, and it worked, and people did. We're like, oh, that is the best. We ended up winning the best old fashioned in Kansas City that year on the pitch, and we kept it on the menu just because it's a good story. I mean, that's how we.
Hopefully, it's still there, right?
It is absolutely still there.
Good.
It will always be there.
Waiting to go down there and try it.
Yeah, we batch them up now.
Yeah.
We batch them up now. We sell them. They're really good. I mean,
because I remember my neighbor. He had it like in a pre-made bottle, right? Like yeah. We sell them in like 375s now, small bottles. I always tell people AMC Theater will probably kill me, but they're great to take into theaters. They're great. I mean, if you're looking for a nice cocktail, just get a cup of ice and bring that with you. Hell yes. So how long did it take you to evolve from one brand or one, you had your Kansas City whiskey. How long did it take for you? Like, all right, let's try this. Let's try that. Because, you're like, your maple finish, and then you're...
Honestly, a year and a half. In that small space, I mean, you when you walk into our train tunnel parlor, you do get a sense of it, but you've got a bar that sits, in the front, and then behind that was our production area. We were in there for a year and a half, and that space was so small. And in that space, we were producing upwards of 750 bottles of Kansas City whiskey a week. We're blending it. We were bottling it. We were getting crews down there.
So you're doing it all in-house?
The blending and for the Kansas City whiskey, the blending process.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So blending, and it's probably a good important note to talk about whiskey because I love talking about this. And Kansas City whiskey is its own unique style of whiskey with the addition of sherry.
Yeah, I was going to
historical.
Get that too. Yep.
Your friend Ryan is a great proponent of that. When they launched Rieger in 2014,
Because it's
with
its
the Kansas City
own
whiskey
style.
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
We talk about them on our tours. I think they mention us as well.
Yep,
and like
they sure
it's
do.
it is a rising tide lifts all ships, and exposure to that style of whiskey, I think is amazing because I love it. I love theirs. I love ours. I think it's really good stuff. But in order to launch a whiskey and to start a distillery, especially in as small of a space as we had, how do you do that? You have to basically source whiskey, buy whiskey aged already.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that. I wanted to do something unique, other than being part of whiskey groups and talking to whiskey drinkers. It was important for me that we didn't just purchase a bourbon and cut it down to a proof that we liked and put a label on it.
Yeah.
I really wanted to create a unique blend with a flavor profile. Something that it's an expression of ours that we created that kind of highlights what West Bottoms Whiskey Company can do with a blend. Even if we didn't distill and age it ourselves, this is what we can do with some very, very good whiskeys. So in that space, we were doing that, but it was the first year and a half. I was like, oh my God, we gotta get more space. So after that, I talked to the building owner. He had just bought the building with the brick wall connecting us. And that was the Quincy building that he purchased. And it was called the Quincy building because it was built by John Quincy Adams' grandson.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty neat.
Didn't
John
know
Quincy
that.
Adams, a little bit of a history here in Kansas City with some of the development that was going on, some of the businesses as well. But that space was great. John Deere did manufacturing there. They were still making leather goods at that time, but that's when we got that space, and space was really the name of the game. Once I have space, then I can create new products. And so the first thing we did after we moved into that space was purchase some more bourbon that we liked, and we put it into Malbec casks from Amagoni Winery. They had just dumped some Malbec wine.
So right down the street.
Just down the road. Yeah. They're great neighbors, great friends. And we let that sit for 6 months. So we did our first release after the Kansas City whiskey was a finished whiskey. Our second after that was a maple cask finished rye,
Which is really good.
that one was really fun.
Yeah.
That one was the rye whiskey we use for the Kansas City whiskey is a very spicy rye. I think it's great. I think the flavors in it are really interesting, but it can be very overwhelming to the palate for a lot of people. So how do you tame something like that?
Yeah.
They're called Run Amok maple syrup producers up in Vermont. They make great organic, grade A maple syrup. Asked them, because they had a barrel-aged syrup that they used, asked them if they had any barrels around. They said they had some Whistle Pig 10-year rye barrels. So I said, I'll take 4 of those.
Yeah.
They shipped them down. They were very, very old. They're very gnarly-looking barrels. But I rehydrated those. I used my fiance's clothes steamer. Just stuck it in there. So the wood expanded, and we threw the rye in there and let it sit. And that one's, for whiskey drinker, that one's crazy too, because maple, you think of Crown Maple, and that's something that we had to talk to people about, which was like, we didn't add anything to this. Like, we took a rye and all we did was put it in another barrel and just let nature and the atmosphere and just time do its thing in that whiskey. And it created a really, really unique, really tasty rye whiskey, essentially. Yeah.
That sounds delicious. I know I had it before. It's really good.
Yeah. We may do it again. We get asked about it.
Yeah.
But after that, though, after those 2 whiskeys, I kind of shifted focus. At that point, once we had the space, I was able to get a bigger still. So I ordered a 211 gallon, 800 liter still from Portugal. It is hand hammered. It is beautiful. Her name is Hestia, by the way. Hestia was a Greek goddess known for her scar. And I called her that because when I came from Portugal, the onion head on top had a huge dent in the side. So I had to hammer it out by hand.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was a little scary, honestly. For that big of an investment to have it arrive damaged like that was crazy. But now she's got a beautiful scar on the side of her face. And it's funny with distillers, too. It is tradition to dent your still. When you get a new still, put a dent in it, because otherwise
it's already dented. So
it's going to be dented no matter what. At some point, you might as well just take the pain away now. And that's kind of, why we named her that.
Okay, so let's talk about a few of these brands that are here.
Yeah.
So this is the signature blend, right?
So that's our American blended malt. Yeah. So that one we're excited about. That one is going to be released out into the market pretty soon. This summer, we're going to start distributing that one. when I said we refocused, I refocused on distilling whiskey. I wanted to distill a whiskey, and so I started creating a single malt whiskey that I liked. It's 50% two-row barley, which is sweet and what most beers are made with, and a peated malts as well. Peated malts is what scotches are made from. So I wanted to create essentially a balanced whiskey with that. So even though it's a bigger still, it's still small scale for distribution. I was able to create a single malt whiskey called Distiller's Cut. It's 100 proof. We sell it only in the parlor right now. But how do you take that expression? It was a matter of how do I take what I learned from the blending process of the Kansas City whiskey? Because that whiskey is great and it won some great awards. And how do you take what I learned from distillation and aging, and how do you kind of combine those two things? And that's what the American blended malt whiskey is. That one is a blend of a one barrel of our American single malt or Distiller's Cut. That one is made 100% in-house. We fermented, distilled, aged it there, sat in very small barrels for a year. And we combined that with a 4-year-old single malt that we sourced, a selected barrel that I really liked. I really liked the flavor notes in it. And I wanted to see how our whiskey that we made would change the profile of another single malt whiskey. And that's how that one was born. It's great. It's got some really nice grassy notes, some hay, a very nice prominent honey note on it as well. And the goal with that is just a sipper. It's if you are thinking about scotches, that's a really good one to get into.
So, well, then you got
our baby. All right.
baby. Yeah. This is just the Kansas City whiskey. Yeah.
Kansas City whiskey. And Kansas City whiskey, by definition is a blend of, ours is a blend of a bourbon and a rye, two different very good whiskeys, and an Oloroso sherry from Spain. And that's really kind of the key ingredient for Kansas City whiskey is the addition of sherry. Historically, it was used to rectify
Does it have to be from Spain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that specific region. Yeah. And that's it. That is essentially what ties it to the history of what was going on, in that it's a pre-Prohibition style of whiskey. Pre-Prohibition era is when all of that kind of rectification was happening, and after Prohibition as well. If you think about the stock of whiskey and just Prohibition in general, when they banned alcohol all across the United States, in the early 1900s, it was insane to think about now, but it was because people were drinking a lot. People were drinking so much. Aging whiskey was becoming harder. It was lighter whiskey at that point. So how do you make whiskey and age it or rectify or improve the flavor? You can do that with just a little bit of sherry into the blend itself, and that gives flavor and color to what were otherwise kind of maybe rougher whiskeys back then. And what we've done with it and what Rieger's done with it and other producers have done with Kansas City whiskey, I think is fascinating, because you can alter the profile of a blend. And I also think, as a producer, I think it also brings a lot of attention to blending whiskeys and how that is an art in and of itself. It's difficult to distill and age whiskeys, and we're doing that. And to get that product right, is going to take time and years. And I hope people like it now, and I hope they like it 10 years from now.
Oh yeah.
The blending is its own art. I don't know. Do you have a preference between, a straight bourbon rye or scotch, or do you like blends?
Oh man, I'm a huge bourbon whiskey guy, and I think we talked a little bit earlier. I like my stuff high proof.
Yeah.
But I don't shy away from anything that's like 90 or anything. I just love bourbon. It's just one of those things where if it makes it even better if I'm around good people. So it's really doesn't really matter what I'm drinking. It's like, as long as I'm around good people, it's like the bourbon's going to be great anyway.
I love that too.
Yeah. It's like cigars too. It's like, that's how I got into, because I got into bourbon before I got into cigars. I'm a huge bourbon guy. So what we're geeking out over right now, I'm loving it. So this is great for me. But cigars are almost the same. It's like, I have so many favorite cigars, but if I'm around good people, it's like cigar I'm smoking is always just.
It doesn't. It doesn't matter as much. I'm kind of the same way. I mean, if you've ever done whiskey tastings on flights, or if you're getting around with a group of friends to do a bottle share, bottle shares are so cool. You get a wide variety of drinkers at that point, and a wide variety of whiskeys, and the fact that you can sit around and talk about what the flavor notes are or the story. And I love when people come and they can provide a story for a whiskey, and it's kind of the same thing. You're also creating story at that point too. Yeah. I mean, some of your some of my best moments are sitting around with friends, you know, having a sip of whiskey and then another, and then probably a few more after that.
Yeah.
But
Have
that
you
is
ever
kind of the
seen
great thing.
that show Neat or
yeah.
Oh yeah. So that's like
It's good. It perfectly encapsulates
yeah.
what American whiskey really is and should be.
Yeah.
I mean, the experience that people have when they try a whiskey, whether it's from one of their, you know, bigger brands out there or something maybe local or smaller produced. If you can find something you like about it, I think that's really the most important thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that hit home for me watching that documentary was like, not really documentary, I know what the hell, it's a movie documentary or whatever.
Yeah.
But it kind of said, like Freddie Johnson said, like, hey, like there's always going to be good bourbon floating around. Like, so like, don't just save it for occasion because you never know if that ever is going to happen. So like all my bottles are always open. Like I don't save anything. Like I have really good bottles. I have just normal bottles. Like, but like everything is, like if I'm around good people, everything's up for grab. Like let's
Kind of how it is in our space too. At home, I've a pretty modest, very very small collection.
Yeah,
my home bar is it's on an old gas oven from the 1930s that I kind of gutted and made into a little bit of a bar, but it's only got a few bottles on it.
Well, at least you have bottles, and so you have West Bottoms whiskey. I have the cigar lounge. I don't have cigars at home. So
really?
No, that's a big problem because I always run into that problem when I'm at home because I'm never home a lot.
Yeah.
And so I just brought everything down here. And then like when I'm at home, I'm like, God, I want a cigar. I'm like, how do I not have a cigar when I have my own cigar?
I 100% do that too.
Yeah.
Our office we have attached to our distiller production area, new production area now. We've got this beautiful piece that our friends, when they owned 9th and State, Heather and Sean, great couple, in the area, and they had this beautiful piece from 1910 that they were getting rid of out of their bar. And I was like, you know, yeah, we'll definitely take it. They sold it to us for way too cheap. But we took that, and we had been donated bottles from people traveling for years at this point. And we finally had a beautiful place to put it, but it's not, our selection in our distillery is not, you know, a very rare Weller or any kind of a Pappy or anything like that. A lot of ours are very good whiskeys from other distilleries, a couple maybe rare ones, but nothing that any whiskey collector is going to be shouting about. Our collection is like things that we thought were really cool. 100% rice whiskey from, you know, Jacksonville, Florida is one that we have.
Sounds amazing.
A port finish from, like it's really interesting stuff. We love talking about that. And when we have people down to our space, that gives us a chance to kind of express, you know, from a producer our size, you know, these are what we can produce and this is what we can showcase as well.
So what, if you're not drinking your own stuff, what do you like drinking?
If I'm not drinking my own whiskey or, I really, one of my favorites is Old Forester 1910. I think it is.
That 1910, 1920 are really
so
good.
delicious.
Yeah.
I think every bottle I've ever had has just been very good. For me with whiskeys, I love, like always goes back to story. And like, hopefully for a lot of our whiskeys we produce, you create a story. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You've got that up front, you've got that middle that carries you through, and you've got a finish that reminds you of, you know, something. Stranahan's is also a distillery I really love. They do their malt whiskeys great. I think they do a great job of expressing what malt whiskeys can be. Their grain bill reads more like a craft beer than it does a standard whiskey. You know, bourbons and ryes have, you know, corn, malts, rye, maybe some wheat in it. When you start making whiskeys with, you know, caramel pills and honey malts and more robust, darker malts, like those flavors are going to come out in that whiskey one way or another. And to me, that's a really cool one to sip on as well.
So we were talking earlier about blending and like you coming up with all these ideas. Is it like you have like a team of people like, hey, let's do this? Or you just like, your mind's going all the time like, oh, this is a good idea, or let me try this, or
my mind is going all the time. and I have no shortage of taste testers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm saying, if you ever need one,
around.
you let me know.
Yeah, I'll let you know. For the most part, coming up with the blends was just kind of on my own. I think I really want to hit, if I'm going to release a whiskey, I really want it to be approachable. And it's not approachable in the sense of like, it's just light. I could cut a whiskey down to 80 proof and just, you know, you'll get hints of this and this.
Yeah.
If it's a blend, I want you to taste the notes that are kind of expected, and at the proof especially. Proof is very important, I think, to whiskeys when you sip them. And I think that's a lot of the time and consideration that I put into blends. But I definitely share with a lot of people and just get their take on it. I think for me, a lot of the times I can guess a lot. I've been surprised a few times where people is like, it's too much green apple. You need to tone this back or something like that. But for the most part, it's just kind of coming up with it. I mean, we've talked about our next blend after the American blended malt. What can we come up with, and how can we come up with a nice expression that, gets us out there?
Yeah.
For us as a business, and for me in my role, I would be, we are a distillery, right? But we also blend from sourced whiskeys, and we take other whiskeys and we finish them in barrels. And so for us as a business, I think we consider ourselves more of a whiskey company than a distillery, if that makes sense. Like we just want to, whatever we put out, we want to put our signature on it, and we want to make sure that it's very good for a lot of different people.
So how did you come up with a bottle? Like, cause it's good, like, cause you guys in like Rieger, I know a lot of local things, but like you guys have cool bottles and like,
fantastic
this
packaging.
one stands out.
Yeah, I love Rieger's packaging. I love all the packaging around Kansas City, actually. Restless is beautiful. Lifted, Mean Mules is really fun. Guinea Horse, I think when I see a stack of their stuff on shelves, I think is impressive as well. But it all looks good and is on theme. For us, the packaging, it was really important to me that we stood out as a brand, especially when we opened. And I knew we're only going to be able to produce this for probably a while. This Kansas City whiskey, and it's got to stand out. Yeah. So a bottle with some broad shoulders was important. That was really important. A flask style. Flask style is to me very West Bottoms. I used to trade, bottles of whiskey for, certain goods down in the West Bottoms. Coffee. It wasn't anything bad.
No, you're good.
But the barter system is still very, a little bit Wild West down there. Trading goods for goods. You produce this, I produce this. Let's make an even exchange. Kind of thing. So a flask style that could fit in the back of your pocket was cool, but obviously that one would be a stretch.
Yeah, that's fitting back in your pocket.
And the fleur de lis, that symbolism and that symbol was kind of neat, and I wanted to stand out, and I also wanted you to see the whiskey inside, what's in there and what you're going to be drinking, and that depth of color and caramel is really, really cool to look at. For me, the Kansas City whiskey especially, I always kind of envisioned it as, if I were going to be opening up a wood crate in 1922 or something like that, and pop it open and it's just covered in straw and you're just pulling those bottles out of a straw box kind of thing. Like that's to me what I really wanted it to look like on the packaging.
Oh, I love it, man. I think it's so cool. So what's the age statement on it? On no
age statement on a blend. The whiskeys we use are at least 2 years old in the whiskey, especially the bourbon. When we get 3 year, we use it. 2 year, we use it. I mean, the cool thing about blending whiskeys, and we say this on our tours too, and when I talk to people about drinking whiskey, right? And like whether you're a novice or you've been drinking it for years, understanding the whiskey that you're drinking is important. Yeah. The grain bill, I always, when you're drinking a whiskey, you're tasting the grain bill. The cuts that were made, the proof, and also what the barrel did. And that's more for like straight bourbons and ryes. With blends, you're going to be drinking like a bouquet of flavors. You're getting, with our blend, it's 2 different whiskeys. And with the Kansas City, with the introduction of sherry, I mean, you're getting a lot of flavor. And if you can balance that, I think that is kind of the true measure of a good blend. Is when you're presented with a lot of different flavors. But with straight bourbons and ryes, you're going to get more punctuated notes, and those can be really, really beautiful as well.
So what's next for you guys?
So we just released a very, very limited release whiskey. We did a rye whiskey. We did another one, partnered up with Amagoni again. This was kind of funny because they called and they said, "Hey, we just dumped all this Tannat wine. Do you want one of the barrels?" And I said, "Yes." Yes. Yeah. Drove over there and I Googled what Tannat meant. I didn't know what Tannat wine was, to be honest.
I'll take it anyway.
And it's a very rich, delicious wine. It's one of the highest antioxidant wines out there. The barrel was beautiful. Took it back, added a rye whiskey to that. And just honestly, we sat it and forget it. Previously, we'd done like 4 barrels at a time for the finishes, and this was just a one-off just to see what would happen. And we really took our time with the packaging on that one too. We only sell that one in the parlor because we only have about 150 bottles left of it. So please come down.
That's what to say.
Get a bottle.
Yeah,
it's in 375s, but We wax dip that one with a nice burgundy wax. We put our seal on the top of it. And the packaging too is really beautiful. It's got basically a woman's hand holding a fan on it, and it's wide open. And that, my fiance, when we like to look up old articles and things like that, and she found an old article that had a fan flirtation guide. So from when women in the 1860s through early 1900s, when they'd walk around, there was no air conditioning, so they would carry fans all the time. But they would also use fans to communicate with their suitors, to ward them off, or to flirt with them, essentially. So it was a fan flirtation guide. So when you had a fan completely wide open like that, it meant wait for me. I thought that's a perfect name for a whiskey, so we called it our Wait For Me rye.
That's cool.
Yeah. After that, we're going to be putting away another barrel here in the next few weeks in a very strange barrel. And then
very strange barrel, huh?
A very strange barrel. Yes, this one's interesting. A little preview of what it's going to be. So it was a barrel. Our tour guide Ben reached out to somebody he saw on Facebook Marketplace. Our friends at Veritasi were getting rid of some barrels out in Lee Summit and gave us one of these barrels that was Jack Daniel's first. Then our Barbados rum for, I believe, 9 years. Then had a cocktail in it. So it is it is a ballyhoo. It is a crazy barrel.
Flavor bomb.
It is going to be something else.
Yeah.
It's going to be another one off, like the Wait For Me. That one, I'll be putting that away soon. And after that, I'm really kind of getting the itch to do another blend soon to get out into distribution, something we can kind of, get our name out there a little bit more.
So are you looking to expand, or are you going to still be kind of in the West Bottoms?
Our space, we can't really expand a whole lot of our retail space. We love it when it's full. It doesn't, we would always love to see more people come down. We're open 5 days a week right now. Our production area, I would say, if we can increase our Kansas City whiskey production a little bit more and get some more blends out, we'll be in a spot to expand, but we're pretty happy right now.
Yeah, good.
You
can't really move, because then you can't, West Bottoms whiskey's got to be West Bottoms, right?
It's got to be in the West Bottoms. Yeah. There's ways to set up, different like aging houses and our production or blending areas. And those are all possibilities. But for where we are right now, I think we're sitting good. The space we got it's big for us. It's a pretty big space for us for where we're at.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you the same thing I told Ryan. Like, I got to get both of you guys over here to make a Strawberry Hill whiskey.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or we just come up with it at your place or his place or something. And
we could do a little blend.
Yeah.
They got some good stuff going there. We got some good stuff too. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. I would love like a little bit of local feel over here, because that's what's missing over here. Like, we just need like a whiskey place over here.
Yeah. A little bit of a whiskey shop. Come and get in. Exclusivity is great with whiskey and cigars. I would love a whiskey spot over here.
Yeah. Well, there's spots open. We can tempt you guys to come back over here.
Yeah. Yeah. Any possibility of that in this area?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we'll definitely find you a spot. Don't worry about that.
Okay, good.
So, you got to give out, you got to plug your spot, man. Like, so tell people about it.
Yeah. So, West Bottoms Whiskey Company, cocktail parlor down in the West Bottoms. We do tours, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. The tours are great. You get to try all three of our whiskeys that we got available now, our KC whiskey, our blended malts, and our distiller's cut. We do flights. We're open 5 days a week, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 12 to 8 p.m., Thursdays, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., Fridays and Saturdays, 11 a.m. to midnight. We do live music occasionally. Follow us there and just see what we're coming up with. We do have a lot of cocktails. We almost started a staff bingo, or we're talking about it, of people when they come in, because we always have to set an expectation, especially on First Friday weekends when people come in. They're like, "What is this place?" And so you have to have a whole story.
Yeah.
When someone asks for a vodka tonic, we're like, we don't have that here. We don't, we don't have any vodka, but we do have whiskey. And explaining to people, like, we have very approachable whiskey cocktails. Old Fashions, Manhattans, or Boulevardier, they're really good, traditional cocktails. We barrel age our Manhattan, those are good stiff whiskey drinks. But on the other end of that, we want people to try whiskey and explore it. And so if you're bringing someone down, or your partner doesn't necessarily like whiskey that much, like, please check it out. It's good stuff.
So how many people can you have on a tour?
We cap it around 16 to 20 people.
Okay, that's perfect.
On a tour. If people ever want to come down for like a corporate event or something like that, you can always message us, Murdoch at westbottomswhiskey.co.
Murdoch, there he is again.
Yeah, Murdoch. That's what we call our gentleman there. Yeah. And yeah, just follow us on socials too. See what's new, what we're working on. We always try to be
Instagram,
very
Facebook.
transparent about everything. Yep. Yeah. Instagram, Facebook. We do bottling runs occasionally too. You've probably seen on some of our social media. We get people down. All of our bottles are hand bottled and labeled, which is a task in and of itself. But it really does take a community of people to get it done.
All right. So last question before we end it, man. So if you could change anything, like go back 5-10 years, like I guess not really change anything, but what would you tell yourself before you started all this? Now that you're year 3 in.
Year 3 in.
If you can go back in like 2018 when it's like the thought is fresh.
Get more cash. Get more cash up front, and it's going to be a grind. But it'll be worth it. That's what I would say for sure.
And then also, I guess, what would you tell somebody if they were trying to get into the game?
Trying to get into the game?
Yeah.
Get in good locally with your. Do your research on the local permits and the laws and the guidelines, because it is to do a tasting rooms, health department, fire department, city code, state, local, federal permits. It's a lot. I mean, if you're willing to take on that task and find a space, do it. And then find a good story.
Yeah.
You can. I've told this to other people that want to do this or thinking about doing it. Like, get a good story, because if you believe in that story and you can push behind it, that's going to carry you further than you thought you could go, for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, it has been great talking
Mike,
to you, man.
I love this.
Oh, yeah. This, like I said, like this is one of my favorite podcasts because I love bourbon, so I can just chat and sit and talk with you and about bourbon. So this is awesome.
Yeah.
So, man, I love having you on.
Come check out the shop. You got to seriously check it out. This place is awesome.
And then come check out West Bottoms Whiskey down in West Bottoms, too. What's the address down there?
1321 West 13th Street. We're by the haunted houses, Chef J Barbecue. We got all the barrels out front. Can't miss us.
Awesome. Well, it's been my pleasure, man.
Yeah,
Thank you for
pleasure.
coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Like I said, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you make sure you follow us. And make sure you go down to West Bottoms Whiskey, check them out. Go buy a bottle because I know I will. Not today because you guys are closed, but
tomorrow.
Yes. I appreciate you, man, and thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.